Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome. I see we have people from all over the world logging in. We have folks from the USA, of course, the UK, Switzerland, Mexico, South Africa, some from China. We have quite a few from India, some even from Israel. So welcome to you all. It's great that you could join us on this webinar. My name is PJ Nisbet. I am the ValueSelling Managing Partner for EMEA, based in the UK, in England. And what I'm going to be talking to you about for the next 45 minutes or so is how we can create enough qualified leads, which I'm sure for most of us is one of our biggest challenges. I want to try and help you, get you into a position where you can have the face-to-face conversations or the conversations on the telephone to present your solution. It's all about how do we do that. As people are joining the session, if you wouldn't mind filling in the Q&A box on the left-hand side to let us know where you're calling from, it's always useful to know the context of the audience. Particularly welcome to those from South Africa. I know it's a public holiday in South Africa. It's an important day in your calendar, the 16th of June, so well done for you guys for logging in on a public holiday. For those people who, if you have colleagues who are going to be late or you know of some who cannot make this webinar, then just to let you know that it is being recorded and it will be uploaded onto the ValueSelling website during the course of the day in the US or tomorrow if you're outside the US. If you stay right through to the end, I have a special offer for you. I'm offering a discount off one of our ValueSelling Essentials e-learning programs. We have a promotional discount, significant discount, which was in effect until the end of June. So at the end of this webinar, I'll tell you a little more about that. Let's kick off with a brain teaser, just to keep your left brain and your right brain engaged and to keep the participation levels high. What I would like you to do is to think about this question, and if you can type your answers into the Q&A panel on the left-hand side of your screen. What you see in front of you is the numbers between 1 and 15 listed below, except there are two missing, 9 and 4. So the question is, where do you think these numbers would fall in this sequence? So if you can, as I say, use both sides of your brain. This is definitely thinking outside the box one. Where do you think the numbers 9 and 4 fall in the sequence? 8, 11, 15, 5, 14, 1, 7, 6, 10, 13, 3, 12, 2. Where would I put the number 9 and the number 4? Have we got any good answers to that? Obviously a bit of a tester. There we have, I think Elijah in Ghana has figured it out, that actually what we need to do here is we need to think alphabetically, not numerically. So you need to slot 4 in between 5 and 14, and you need to slot 9 in. Obviously starts with an N, so before 1 would start with an O. So our brains don't work like this. Our brains, obviously, we're so drilled into thinking about what order the numbers come into that it's sometimes hard for us to think creatively and think outside the box. This is, I think, a way to demonstrate that in this modern world that we live in, this internet age that we live in, we also have to think outside the box in terms of how do we get more leads and more proposals. It has become more difficult. I think it's a bit of a paradox that in information age, the internet age that we live in. People have access to so much information, and yet it is so difficult to talk to people. And I'm sure many of you listening to this webinar have been frustrated by doing your email campaigns and doing all of the hard work to get warm leads, and then not being able to actually have the conversation and talk to people. We also all know that it's becoming increasingly difficult to access people. So not only are they very busy, but also more and more people are involved with making decisions. So it's becoming increasingly difficult as salespeople to actually get through to people and to be able to have this conversation. Interesting research from CSO Insights on the top sales challenges for 2016. The number one at 53% of companies was that they are struggling with an inability, or they have an inability to generate enough qualified leads. So more than half the companies surveyed, and these were large business-to-business complex sales, so typical with many of your clients, I would suggest, their number one sales challenge this year was their inability to create enough qualified leads. Second was the ability to differentiate, and we all know that as well as something that's come about as a result of this internet age, that it's becoming harder to differentiate ourselves. It's become very commoditized, many products. And then thirdly, sales cycles are too long. So we live in tough times as sales professionals on the one hand, but on the other hand, we do have a lot of very useful tools, which we're going to be talking about in the next 45 minutes or so, to help us through these challenges. So the issues that I'm going to cover in this webinar are firstly how to profile our prospects. So of course it's very important to understand exactly who our target market is, what kind of customers there are, what kind of problems we solve for them, where can we find these people. We need to be very, very, very clear on that. Secondly, I'm going to talk about what activities do we have to carry out to get to our sales target. Those of you who've been in sales for a long time will know that essentially it is a numbers game. There's a certain number of emails you have to send out, a certain number of calls you have to make, a certain number of presentations you have to do, face-to-face meetings you have to do to get the deals in order to achieve your target. So what do those numbers look like? And I'm going to give you some simple tools to figure out what that activity level needs to be. Thirdly, I'm going to explain to you a multidimensional approach to getting meetings with your clients. So as we said earlier, people generally don't pick up the phone. Less than 10% of the time people pick up the phone. What do I do with the other 90%? I'm going to give you a simple methodology and some ideas with what to do with those calls when you're making them. What is the process in terms of speaking to executive assistants, in terms of leaving voicemails, give you some tips on that. And then finally, I'm going to give you 5 practical exercises to stay on top of your prospecting goals. So I'm going to give you some work to do that's going to help you do better in your prospecting efforts going forward. So let's kick off with that. First of all, thinking about specifically the ideal prospect profile. As the famous Stephen Covey, the late Stephen Covey said, we need to begin with the end in mind. We need to be crystal clear about what our ideal client looks like. In my experience, this is, for many companies, more difficult than it sounds because it's harder to figure out what not to do. So who shouldn't we target than who we should target? It always is a tendency to try and target too wide. My suggestion is that you really think about what are the characteristics of your ideal clients. Often a useful exercise to brainstorm your best clients. So what are the characteristics, even down to the values they have, the problems that you solve, the markets they're in, and then next to that, profile the customers that are not your ideal, if you like, your worst customers, and then put the two together to come up with an ideal company profile. The ideal company profile would have things like where are they in their maturity cycle? So are they startup companies? Are they more mature? In what countries are they in? In what countries can you deal with in your business successfully? What is their business situation? What size are they? Are they big companies? Are they small companies? What industry are they in? The clearer our thinking is about where to find these prospects and the kind of situation they're in, the easier it's going to be for us in our prospecting efforts. We need to think about their buying roles. So what are the typical kind of job titles that we address? A lot of research around the fact, as I mentioned earlier, that there are more and more buying roles involved in the sales process. CEB, their research talked about 5.2 buying influencers now involved in each purchasing process. So this number is getting greater. It will depend on your particular product as to how many people are involved. But we need to really identify what are the roles, and then more than that, look at, from those of you who have been on the value selling program, will understand what we mean when we're talking about business issues and the problems that we solve. So which job titles, first of all, then have a really good think about what are the business issues, normally to do with revenue, cost, quality, or compliance. So what are the things, and it's a cliche which I don't particularly like, but what are the things that keep your prospects awake at night? And then think about that in terms of it's something to do with revenue, cost, or quality, or compliance. It normally has a metric in it, and it's normally time bound. So it's not a project, but it's something which really is the most important thing for them. If they sat down with their team leader once a year or twice a year, what are the things that they would be tasked with? What's their most important objective for the year? If we can figure that out and figure out that that's the thing that we're good at solving, then that's going to give us a good indication of what our ideal prospect looks like. And then the third part of this analysis, if you like, is to think about what are the problems that we're really good at solving. So if that's their business issue, what are the struggles they're having? These are normally to do with people, process, or technology. So I would suggest to you that it's inevitably one of those three things: people, process, or technology. And again, I would urge you to think about not the obvious ones, but things perhaps which your clients haven't thought about, your prospects haven't thought about. So what are the problems that you solve with your unique capabilities, and if they're not unique, that you're particularly good at? So what are the solutions in value selling terminology? And again, those of you who have been on the value selling framework will understand what I'm talking about. So what are the unique capabilities or things that you're very good at solving? What problems do those solve? And can we generate a list of 4 to 6 really good problems that we're excellent at solving? And then we should go after those prospects who have those problems connected to the relevant business issue. So it's about, for me, it's about being absolutely crystal clear about not only where the company sits, in what geography, in what market sector, with how many people, but also about what are the specific challenges that you're trying to solve. And if we can be very circumspect and clear on this, it's going to save us a lot of time when we're prospecting. So hopefully you have a reasonable idea about that. And again, part of my homework or my work to give you after this webinar is a little project to think about that, to think about very clearly what are those problems that you're good at solving. The next question is, where do I find these people? This may be obvious for many of you on the webinar, but just to reiterate, we live in this treasure trove of information as salespeople. So it's very easy for us to find industry information, association lists, trade press, lists of the particular companies. I mean, there are many companies that that specialize in lists. Think about partners. So you work with a particular company that does something similar to what you do. I sell value selling for a living, and I have a very good strategic relationship with a company that writes proposals. And so if they come across clients who need a sales methodology, they refer them to me. If I come across clients who are looking for a proposal writing methodology, then I refer them across to them. So look at the industry information, look at partners, and then a third bucket, if you like, is your internal data. So what is your marketing campaign? What's coming out of marketing? What are they producing in terms of the different leads they're running, the different campaigns, the trade shows, what's coming out of that and that they're throwing over to sales? And then which one shouldn't forget is past customers. We all know that the best source of a source of business that is a lot better than trying to find new customers is to talk to your existing customers and figure out from them referrals and build that community. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. Of course, there's external data. You can buy lists, and there are many lists out there. In my experience, the lists are never perfect. I think one has to accept that. It's about taking it, cleaning it, developing it, and obviously using your opt-in and your opt-out technology. There's some wonderful programs that can help you with this, and really analyzing that list and making it work for you. The last one I'd like to mention is obviously social networking. We live in a world of social media. I'm a big fan of LinkedIn, of Sales Navigator, their sales program in particular, and I don't know how many of you are using that, but very nice functionality. You can search on exactly who your target prospects are. You can set up little alerts for when there are changes in your target customers to your particular job roles. The LinkedIn software is alerting you, there's a new sales manager or a new IT manager in this company. So really fantastic tool. And in my experience, your response rate on LinkedIn emails, the messaging system of LinkedIn, is higher than the response rate on emails. I guess this is because on LinkedIn, people can immediately click on your profile. It's kind of the modern way of networking, if you like. I think 20 years ago, you might have gone to a Rotary club or a golf club or a Chamber of Commerce meeting and met people. I think nowadays people click on your LinkedIn profile, see what you look like, see what your experience is, and it's almost like an electronic handshake. So for me, LinkedIn, hugely powerful tool. And when we're talking about identifying sources of prospects and we're talking about creating warm leads, then I think this is a hugely powerful tool which we have as salespeople today. I have a question here from Joseph. Joseph is saying, as a technology startup in artificial intelligence business process automation, the difficulty is actually defining in an understandable way what we can do. Suggestions on being crystal clear. So thank you, Joseph, for that question. As I said, I'm going to give you some nice exercises at the end where you can break down exactly the market sector, the size of company, the stage of direction, the state of development, the type of business role. So do it demographically, first of all, and analyze it. And then the second step is really think about what we in value selling terminology would talk about your vision match. So what are the things that you're really good at? What problems can you solve with those things you're very good at? And what are the typical kinds of business issues that you deal with? And if you think about those things, not too many, so try and keep it very tight, that will enable you to be much more targeted in your prospecting. But happy to talk more with you about that at the end. Moving on to that one point that I mentioned, which people often overlook, is talking to your existing customer base. So don't forget about your current customers. It's by far the best place for you to look. First of all, think about other problems that you can solve. As I said, it's all about what problems you solve for your clients. So if you've solved one problem, maybe there's other areas that you can work in. Typically, in the value selling world, what we find is we work with sales teams to make them more productive, but then we find very quickly that we end up talking to their marketing department. So in the same company, they have a sales team, they have a marketing department. We're saying, actually, that's another problem in the marketing department, is how do I create powerful, compelling vision matches or value prompters, or going through their marketing assets and looking at how do we now design these along the same principles as value selling in order to make our marketing more effective. So we start off working with a sales team, and then very often can talk about the same clients to say, how can we now help solve problems that your marketing team is having in terms of creating more leads. So it could be another department in the same company. It could even be another division. So many of you are dealing with large companies, so we're dealing in one division. Do they have another division in another country? How do you leverage that? Or it could actually be as simple as getting referrals from them. Who do you know? Pick up the phone to your best customers and say, who do you know who has this problem? Or who do you know in this role who might need our services, or whose business issue sounds like this? It could be friends, it could be colleagues. You'll be amazed if you ask people directly, I'm looking for people, my work is to do this, who do you know who has this problem? And inevitably, people know someone, and then it's a question of contacting them, and you can use the referral. So by far the biggest way, I believe, particularly in this modern world we live in, where ironically everyone has access to everybody through the internet, but I think it's even more important that referrals are now even more important. Trust is even more important. So if you can be contacting someone and saying, I'm contacting you because our mutual friend or colleague or whoever it is has suggested I do so, I think in this modern day that is probably the most powerful way of creating leads. So don't forget your existing customers, build a community around that. And you'll find from there, not selling them things, but just building with them, you will get leads. So I have a question here from Robert. Many people feel it's too intrusive. So Robert, I don't know if you want to elaborate a little more on that. If you're talking about the cold call being intrusive, I'm going to talk a bit more about that. So let me hold that question and come back to it a little later if we haven't covered it. But thank you, Robert, for that. If any other questions, just let me know, and if I don't deal with them at the time, I'll come back to them at the relevant time. So we've talked about understanding who your ideal client is, being crystal clear about that, understanding where you could find those prospects. So where would you look, and how would I start to get this information? I would now like to consider the numbers or the metrics. We all know, those of you who certainly have been in sales for a long time, that sales performance is about two things. One is about the quality of the interaction. So how good is my conversation that I have with a prospect? Am I able to present my solution in a compelling way? Am I able to drive opportunities once I've started that conversation? So there's a quality of call, but then very importantly, there's a quantity. And I'm often amazed in the classes that I run, although this seems very obvious, that actually you need to remind people that it is about quality, so how good is the conversation, but also about quantity. How many attempts am I making to have a conversation? And it's a very simple maths process to go through. I have a question that Chelsea has asked. When is the best time to to ask for a referral from a customer and a client? Great question. Thank you, Chelsea. I would say the best time to ask someone is right after you have delivered value. So when you have completed your delivery of the solution, whatever it is, when you're starting to see the business value that you promised them, then is a good time to be saying, if you're happy with what we've done, then is there anybody else you could refer us to? Great question to ask people is when they've when you've achieved your value, is to ask them, why did you choose us? I'm just interested. Why did you choose us to deal with? And you'll be surprised at the answers you get. And that can be a really useful way to figure out not only what your unique capabilities are, but also then to lead on and say, well, if that's why you chose us, do you know anybody else who you think could be in the same situation? And can you give me that referral? So, yeah, it's by far the best way to build businesses through referrals. Just coming back to the quantity discussion and looking at the number of prospects that I need, let's take an example of you have a sales target of $2 million, pounds, euros, CDs if you're in Ghana, rands if you're in South Africa, rupees if you're in India, whatever it is. You have $2 million to achieve in your sales target. The first step you need to do is to figure out what is the average deal size, and you can do that, just go through your last year or talk to your colleagues, find out what the average deal size. So let's say in this example that it's 125,000 units is your average deal size. I then divide the total sales target for the year or the quarter or whatever it is, whatever the time period is, by the average deal size. So in this example, it would be 2 million divided by 125,000 means that I need 16 deals. Some will be bigger, some will be smaller, but I basically need 16. I then need to figure out what my win ratio is. And again, this will vary from client to client, and I would urge you to think about this, talk to your colleagues about it. When you have a meeting or you send out a proposal, what is the probability of it closing? I'm suggesting in this example 3 out of 1. So every 3 proposals I send out, I close 1. Every 3 meetings I have, I manage to close 1. So for some of my clients, it might be 1 in 2. For some of you, it might be 1 in 4. But it's a critical ratio to figure out. Let's, for the purpose of this conversation, let us say it's 1 in 3. I then need, of course, to figure out that if I need to get 16 deals, then, and it's a 1 in 3 ratio, that means that I'm going to have to get qualified prospects. 3 times 16 gives me 48. So I need 48 qualified prospects. You then need to figure out another ratio, which is important, and those of you who've got marketing departments, you can have this discussion with them. What is the ratio of qualified marketing leads, MQLs, some companies call them, market qualified lead, MQL? How many of those do I need to get a meeting? So if every lead that you give me, and that might be from a trade show, it might be from LinkedIn or an email campaign, could come from anywhere. Every one of those that comes in, how many of those convert into a meeting? If that's 1 in 5, then the math, depending on which part of the world you're from, it looks like this. So if it's 1 in 5, that means if I've got to get 48 prospects, I need 5 times 48, it's 240 per year, which equates to 20 per month, or roughly 1 per day. So this is a fictitious example, but the math is critical. You need to figure out what your target is. If that's my target, what's the average deal size? If that's the average deal size, how many of those do I need to get to the target? What's my meeting or proposal? Depends on how you sell. Some people use a lot of proposals. Some people just do meetings or whatever it is. From that point in your funnel, the middle of your funnel to close, what's that ratio? and then what is the ratio from the top of the sales funnel, i.e. the prospecting ratio to meeting, what is that ratio, and then how many leads do I need, how many market qualified leads do I need per day or per week in order to make the calls. And sales is a numbers game, and I think, again, those of you who've been in the business for many years will know that. This is a profession which is about numbers and activity, and if I do the calls and create the emails and create the marketing leads, you will be successful. But if you don't create enough leads coming in the top of the funnel, your chances of hitting your target are going to be limited. It's going to be luck if you make your target rather than good selling or good prospecting. So I'd like to do a little poll now and ask you how you generally prospect. So fortunately, as I say, we've moved on from the days of the cold call, whereas now I think we're in this world of warm leads. How do I create warm leads? How do I get an email or LinkedIn invitation where someone actually wants to talk to me? And obviously there's many ways you can do this. Emails we've talked about. We've talked about LinkedIn conversations. We've talked about social media. So by social media, I mean business social media. So Twitter. Perhaps some of you are using Twitter, but it's a very powerful medium as well. Normally Twitter is used to drive traffic to a blog or to a website, but it's a very useful signposting media. So what is happening on Twitter, what is happening with your content, your blog, what is happening on your email, on your website traffic. So again, there's some great software in the world today that can track exactly who's coming onto your website and what they're looking at and what they're doing. So where are these leads coming from? And then the final one, which I really want to spend a little bit of time on this afternoon, is telephone calls. You know, I think it's a bit of again, an interesting thing that's happened in the sales profession over the last few years is that people have said, well, actually, we can prospect by emailing, or we can prospect by using all the fantastic social media tools. And there was a period where, I remember seeing headlines of the cold call is dead. Telephones, the role of the salesperson is falling away. I would suggest to you that the pendulum is swinging the other way, and actually people are now saying, hey, you know what? The telephone is still a really important tool that we need to be using in order to prospect. And I'm going to talk a bit more about how do we do that in a moment. But I'm just interested from a little poll. If I give you a choice of those, so if you think about, I'm going to put up the next slide, there's going to be a poll on it, and I want you to tell me how you are creating your warm leads. So think about these four that I've mentioned. Do you create warm leads by email only, LinkedIn only, both email and LinkedIn, or some other way? Maybe it's trade shows or referrals or some other way of doing it. I'm going to give you a minute to fill that in. Once I click off this slide, then the poll is closed. So if you wouldn't mind just clicking on which one of those four options, and then I will we'll close the poll and we'll look at the results on the next slide. So I think everyone's had a chance to do that. Shall we look at the results? Well, there you go. That's interesting. So email only, 35%, over a third. LinkedIn only, interesting, very low, 2.4%. But a lot of people doing both, so that's good. And then other, about 25%. So interesting stats. For me, as I say, I would not overlook, and I know it's perhaps different in different countries, but certainly what we see in the UK is the real growth of LinkedIn as a major tool in prospecting. So that, looking at those statistics, that would be my only comment on it would really be is that I'm surprised that LinkedIn is so low, but there again, the combination of LinkedIn and email is quite high. So interesting stats. Okay, well let's move on and talk about the telephone. What I mentioned about the most important tool, which is sometimes overlooked, is the telephone. So, as I said earlier, sorry, just apologies for the slide coming up, slight delay. As I said earlier, your chances of someone picking up the phone are 10%. I've heard figures of 6%. So when you call someone, and think about yourselves, there's nobody sitting around waiting for a salesperson to call them that I know of. Everyone is very busy. We live in this frenetic 24/7 world. People just don't have time. It's interesting, I've noticed with spending part of my working life in South Africa and then moving to the UK in the last 5 years or so. In the UK, it's not uncommon to schedule a call with someone 2 or 3 weeks in advance. So if you want to have a conversation with someone, particularly in big blue chip companies, they'd say, I'd love to talk to you, but we're going to have to do it in 3 weeks' time on this date at that time. And that's a typical way of doing business, very useful. Other cultures may be different. People say, yeah, if you want to talk about it, I'll talk about it to you right now. Our suggestion is that you leave a message if you get through, rather than engage with the prospect. So if you do happen to get through, your chances are less than 10%, rather than jump straight into trying to have a sales conversation, rather try and set up and say, would you have 20 to 30 minutes when we could talk about what I need to, about our particular solution and your business issues. A lot of research about the best time to call. So some people say Wednesday and Thursdays are better than Mondays or Thursdays or Fridays. There's research that early in the morning, so 8 to 9, is the best time for morning calls, and between 4 and 6 p.m. is the best time for afternoon calls. I personally wouldn't call it a lunchtime. I think lunchtimes are a good time for when to do your preparation and your research. A lot of good prospecting is about research. I think it's a good time to do that, apart from the fact that your prospects may be having lunch as well. So avoid lunch times. The immediacy of response is another thing that there is a lot of research on, that the sooner you can react to a warm lead, so someone who actually says, who fills in, who goes onto your website or reacts to a campaign and says, yes, I'm interested, the sooner you can respond to that inquiry, the better. The research is that if you respond within 5 minutes, you have a much higher success rate than if you leave it even for 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes or even later. I'm not suggesting that that people who are browsing on your website, suddenly you call them out the blue and say, I see you're on our website, so I want to talk to you now. I'm talking about a warm lead where someone says, I'm interested, can someone contact me? If you can jump on that and respond very quickly, you have a better chance of success. And again, I think it's a byproduct of this internet age that we live in, that we've become spoiled. We've become very, in the business to consumer world, if you buy something on the internet, you expect a quick reaction, and I think that's flowing over into the business to business world. So don't be disheartened if people don't pick up the phone. It doesn't mean that they aren't interested. It could mean, I would suggest to you, most likely, that they are just busy. There aren't people sitting around waiting for calls from salespeople. Unlikely. So the big question is, what do we do with the other 90%? What do you do with that? And I'm going to suggest to you a very simple methodology that really says these are the things that can happen when you're making a prospecting call. We would always suggest start as high as you can. So whichever the most senior buying role that you want to call on, start calling high. So call as high as you can. MD, CEO, president, doesn't have to be. Could be just a senior person in your role. And then there are 5 likely scenarios. So I would suggest to you that what's going to happen is you're either going to get through, unlikely, but it could happen 6% of the time. You could leave a voicemail. You could speak to their admin or PA or executive assistant, as they're often called. You could leave a message for the admin, PA, or executive assistant voicemail, or you can go through to reception. So if you analyze what happens to your calls, I'm suggesting to you that there are only these 5 scenarios. One of those 5 things will happen. So what you need to do is you need to have a plan which says, I'm unlikely to get through to that buying influence that I'm going for, so then what's going to happen is one of these other things is going to happen. If I'm going to leave a voicemail, how do I do that? I'm going to talk about that in a moment. So what does a good voicemail sound like? Otherwise, I'm going to speak to their executive assistant, and what do I need to do when I speak to them? I want to be asking them if they're available. I want to be sending them an email. I want to be getting their email address. And importantly, I want to be getting a referral to another key buying influence. So the last point on this slide is really important. So every time we talk to someone, we're saying, so I understand Mr. So-and-so is not available. We normally, when we sell our products, we normally talk to this type of person, and we repeat this process. Let me show you diagrammatically, if you can imagine an organization chart of a company, and we've identified that we need to talk to, we're going to start as high as possible, so the CEO, but we also might need to talk to the CIO, we might need to talk to the VP of IT, we might need to talk to the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer, so that's a common one. So there, I mentioned earlier the CEB 5.2 people in a buying process, average. So the CEO, the CFO, the CIO, the VP of IT, you know, there are 4 right there. So there are 4 people. So what we're saying is when you call in, start high, don't expect to get through to the CEO, then either leave a voicemail with them, then get put through to their admin or their PA. If they're not available, leave a voicemail with them. If you can, have a dialogue with that PA or admin, have a conversation with them. In that conversation, say, we normally speak with the CIO. Would he be the right person? You've done some research, obviously, because good prospecting is all about research. And you're saying, I think if you've got the information, Mr. So-and-so is your IT manager or your CIO. Would he be available? Then maybe she says, well, no, hang on, I'll put you through. Just before I put you through, can I just check with you his email address? A useful hint is to figure out the email syntax, so understand the email structure of the company, so you can almost prompt the PA or the executive assistant to say, so would his email address be jsmith@whatever it is.com or .uk. So you're giving a sense of, you know, a lot about that company. And what you can do, and my suggestion is if you look at this, the orange dots here indicate your activities, so your voicemail, your dialogue, your email or voicemails. The blue dots is actually what the client does. Very often the CEO or the person you're talking to says, well, this is not my department, I'm going to send it to someone else. So you create what we call a kind of network, and we're buying into the social DNA of the business. We're appearing bigger than we are, and it's a way of really, rather than focusing on one particular individual, which most of us do, and you're trying to phone them every day for a month, instead of doing that, rather think wider. Think about different buying influences and think about the different interactions that you can have with them. We would recommend that you're doing this every 3 days, that you're trying around, that you're phoning in, you're trying different people, and that you're leaving emails, you're leaving voicemails, and you're basically building this net where the prospect thinks, well, this must be important, you know, because all of these different messages are coming in. So I think that's a really powerful way to prospect. Rather than focusing on one individual, try and build a map of different power people with these different interactions. Key to this is the credibility introduction that we talk about in our value selling classes, and this is covered quite well in other webinars. In fact, if you look on our website, you can download webinars about how to create a credibility introduction. So very briefly, these are the key things that you have 30 seconds in a voicemail or even in an email. You can structure it. Who you are, what you do, that you have solved a business issue or a very large problem for an organization like mine, like theirs. So again, as I talked about at the beginning, it's about what business issues and what problems you solve in similar organizations. The next step is how unique, how is it unique, so how did you do it better than anybody else? And then what was the value or the financial impact that they received from it? So this needs to be very succinct, very clear, so you can get it across in 30 seconds. I would practice this before you start doing any prospecting, because voicemails, some people say, well, should I leave a voicemail? I believe it's important to do that. It's just another, it's another piece of networking. It's another piece of building this DNA of trying to connect with that company. But it needs to be very professional and well done, and it should have these 4 components in there. So the credibility introductions, couple of slides on assistance. A lot of statistics about this. 90% of salespeople give up after the first attempt. Interestingly, 97% don't make it to the 3rd attempt. And again, many of you will know these statistics, that actually it takes 3 attempts very often to get through, and most deals are done after the 3rd or 4th attempt. So there's a kind of paradox there. Most of us give up after 1 or 2 calls, but actually the business is done generally after 3 or 4 calls. So don't be part of that 90% or the 97%. Keep going, because then what you'll find is eventually you will get the breakthrough if you're using this approach of selling to multiple people in that company. I would make at least 3 attempts to contact the identified power people. So of course there's going to be situations where you're phoning and leaving messages and sending emails and nothing's happening. I would say after 3 attempts, I would start to tone down. I would say after 5 attempts that you could put that contact away to come back to them in a few months' time. Of course, if someone says during those 3 to 5 attempts, they say, I don't want to buy, I'm not interested, then I'm not suggesting that you continue to harm them. All I'm saying is that you need to, if we accept the fact that most times people don't pick up the phone, then you need to continue for at least 3 attempts in order to create this net of emails and voicemails to different power people. And that will have a dramatic effect on your ability to get a conversation going, a sales conversation going with that individual. Try and create as many touch points as you can, as I've said. So it's not about targeting one particular person, but try and create as many as you can in order to be effective. Okay, so heading towards the end of this webinar, 5 practical ideas on improving your prospecting effectiveness. So this, if you like, is your homework and work that you can do tomorrow morning or today to figure out how do I get better at this task of prospecting. First of all, profile the organizations most likely to do business with you. Think about the problems they are likely to solve. So back to that earlier question that I said, is don't think about your solution and the features and benefits. Think about the problems that you're good at solving. Secondly, list the key sources of information about these organizations in your industry and your marketplace. So where do I find these people? Do I have to buy a list in? Can I get referrals? Can I partner with someone who calls on the same customers? Who do I know who knows this type of ideal customer? So really give that a good thought. Ask your current customers for referrals, as we mentioned earlier. Think of your 3 best clients, call them and say, this is what I do. Obviously, they're happy with your services. Could you tell me who else you think would be a good person for me to talk to? People don't mind doing that. The research is that most people are happy to give a referral, but the number of salespeople who actually ask for referrals is quite low. So if you ask, you will most likely get some very good leads from that. And then once you have gathered that prospect information, figure out who is the highest level of decision maker. So back to what I said earlier, we want to call high. So call as high as you can, and then think about at least 3 other important buying roles. And then finally, polish up and hone your credibility introduction that you can use as a basis for your email, voicemail, or on the first call. That needs to be very slick. So in conclusion, and then I'm going to take a couple of questions, is what are the things that from a prospecting point of view we need to do? Sorry, slides are jumping around a little. So the first thing is that prospecting is non-negotiable. It is something which, for most of us, we don't enjoy doing. There are a few rare people who love cold calling and love prospecting, but for most of us, it is something which is the thing we want to do least. So it's basic time management. There's always enough time. It's about what's important, and it's about prioritizing time. Some of you might know the Brian Tracy book called Eat That Frog. So your frog is your most important task, and it's the thing that you're most likely to procrastinate on. So the idea is that you do that first. So a really good time management technique is the thing that you want to do least, you start with. And for most of us, often that is prospecting. So start with prospecting, schedule the time, make it happen. It's about the numbers. Be purposeful. Be very focused on, I need to have, if I'm phoning 50 people, I'm going to get 5 conversations, it's 10%. If I can get 3 to 4 conversations by phoning 50 people, I need to dial 50 times in order to get in order to get the 5 conversations. Start with the end in mind, as we said earlier. If I know how many conversations I have a good chance of knowing how many of those I can close, and then I have a good chance of knowing if I'm going to hit my target. It's a simple mathematical calculation as to what I need to be doing each day. And then finally, human nature is such that you need to focus on it and you need to avoid distractions. What happens to us is that we start doing this work and then suddenly there's something else which is more important, and we're off in a heartbeat to do that rather than doing the prospecting, which is basically the bedrock of our ability to be successful. So that is, in terms of content, what I thought would be useful to cover with you. I'm now very open to questions, if there are any out there. We're at 5 to the top of the hour. Any other questions coming through? I have one here about what is the best priority to ask. Sorry, there's 2 here. One, at what point do I give up trying to contact a prospect by telephone? So as I mentioned earlier, I think 5 attempts. After 5 attempts, there's a diminishing return, and I would suggest that you stall. If you haven't got through to them, then I would stall them and come back to them maybe a month later or with a different campaign. Another question, you mentioned the different touch points. Is there an order or priority for which ones to try? So as I said, I would always try and have a dialogue with the highest level of buying influence first, and then speak to the executive assistant, and then when speaking to the executive assistant, ask for that individual's email address, and then ask for the executive assistant's email address. You could say, okay, so now I've got his, shall I copy you in? Would yours be XYZ at the company's name? So again, the more email addresses we can get, the more credibility emails we can send, and then get put through to another buying influence and do the same procedure. If they're not there, leave a voicemail. If speak to their admin, get their email address, and you build it up in that way. Another question here from Joanna. Can you recommend ways to test the efficacy of your credibility introduction? Great question. Thank you, Joanna, for that. Absolutely. I would try it on your colleagues. I would try it on your family even. You need to have this very slick. In the old days, they would call it an elevator pitch, but I don't actually know anybody who met anybody in an elevator and had to do their pitch. But in the credibility introduction, you really need to have those components in it. Talk about the kind of, obviously you're going to tailor it to the individual you're talking to. I think a good tip is to mention the kind of buying role. So if you're calling on data center managers or CIOs, we help CIOs or data center managers solve the biggest challenges of XYZ. We recently helped, and then you use a reference, and if you can build a metric in there, that's very good. So there's some simple checkpoints that you should be using. Do you mention the buying role that you help? Have you got a nice reference story? Have you got a metric? So I hope that helps. I can share more with you. If you drop me an email, I can help you more with that. From Robert, how would you handle correspondence or messaging once a prospect connects to you on LinkedIn? Does connection mean full access? I would not 100% sure of the question, Robert, but I think what you're saying is how do you follow up on LinkedIn? We would normally suggest that you quite quickly get the email address and the phone number. So normally a call to action, and all good prospecting emails should have a call to action. So normally when I'm writing a credibility email on LinkedIn, I'm saying if you're interested in pursuing this conversation, please reply to my email. They say, yeah, I am, and then I'm going back to them and saying, can you give me your email address or a number to call you on? Because many people do not have their contact information on LinkedIn. But really, once you've made that initial contact, connect with them. So we've now spoken on email, so now I can become your connection. Don't be too salesy, so it's not like you're pitching and you're pitching on LinkedIn. Just try and connect with like-minded people who have a common problem, and then get their email address and get their phone number so you can connect with them properly in a different kind of business context, if that makes sense. Okay, we're nearly at the top of the hour. Couple of things in closing. This webinar, as I mentioned, is going to be on the ValueSelling website, so it'll be uploaded later today. You can listen to recordings, ask your colleagues to download it. As I say, the slides are on there and a recording of it. Second point I want to make is that the e-store is available on ValueSelling.com as well. You can buy our book, you can buy a bunch of our tools, and you can get some on-demand courses. There are also complimentary white papers, newsletters, very, very useful tool sets. I would urge you to have a look at www.valueselling.com. Talking about the e-store, I promised you a discount at the start of the webinar. So what I would like to tell you about is a 25% discount that I'm running for one of our ValueSelling Essentials programs. So we have this 45-minute e-learning course on effective prospecting and qualifying. If you would like to purchase that, please send me an email at pjnisbet@valueselling.com. I will give you the promotional code, which will give you a 25% discount of that course. It is normally on our e-store. It normally costs $129, and as part of this webinar promotion, I would be happy to give that to you for $99 until the end of June. So anybody who would like to take advantage of this promotion, drop me an email, and I'll be happy to tell you how to do that. Any questions, any comments, any sort of further discussion, again, please give me an email. Happy to enter into discussions around your prospecting and give you some advice on that. Just to let you know, to save the date, our next webinar is called 5 Steps to Overcoming Objections. So when you get objections, we would say you should welcome those things, but what is the simple steps to how I can handle those? So 5 Steps to Overcoming Objections, and that's on August the 18th at 10 a.m. That's Pacific time. So for those of you in other parts of the world, it'll probably be after your working day, but 10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. So a couple of things in closing. Follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, so we would appreciate follows on that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, if you have any questions or comments or suggestions on the webinar, please don't hesitate to contact me by email, or you can phone my office here in the UK, and I'll be happy to talk further with you. Thank you for your time today. It's been great, really enjoyed it, and happy prospecting going forward, happy selling, and good luck with everything. Thank you. Until next time.